My name is Nathan, and my goal is to tell everyone what it's like to study abroad in Sweden. So, first things first. First, I have some notes on the side to reference if you see me glancing over. So, yeah. The first thing you think about when you're studying abroad is, will you be able to speak the language? For Sweden, it's pretty great because most people speak English. In school, starting, I don't know, I think it's third grade or first grade. One of the two, they start learning English in school. So most people are fluent or close to enough to where like you can get around pretty easily. So it makes life pretty easy if you don't know Swedish. If you're really trying to learn Swedish, it makes it kind of hard. You know, it works out both ways, but if you're not going to be here for a long period of time, that makes it very, very good to study abroad in Sweden for that reason alone. So, what is the academic life like here in Sweden? Well, comparing it to the States, I will say that there are some main differences. There's a lot less busy work, and that kind of goes both ways. So I come from a pretty small university, and we have busy work, but a lot of the times it's like writing essays to help you get familiar with the topic. So here, since I don't have to do those, most classes, you hardly get any grades. Like in my language classes, I would get one grade per course. So I would get just the final. In some of my other courses, there are more grades, but typically it's not very many. Like in my international law class, I think we have 4 grades throughout the entire year or semester, which I'll explain that here in a minute. But they are also much more focused on independent study. So when you're studying abroad in Sweden, a lot of the course material you have to like digest yourself, if that makes sense, to where it's not talked on as much in class as it is that you have to do it on your own. Poor word choice, but you get what I mean. Now for the most important issue of all, what is the food like? Well, so the university I am at, we do not have any cafeteria or provided meals. So we all have to pay for those ourselves, which luckily for me, through my study abroad organization, since I'm paying for a meal plan back home and I'm not getting a meal plan here, they put all that money on a little debit card and I can go and buy food with that. Since I have to make most of my own food, a lot of it seems to be very similar to what I would have back home because I am making it. But in the few times I have had actual Swedish food or ate at Swedish restaurants, there hasn't been a huge difference. I'm saying this currently in Sweden. I do not really even taste like a sugar difference in anything. Like a lot of the stuff I eat is comparable to what I had back home. The few Swedish meals I have had was I had actual Swedish meatballs made by my Swedish professor, and those were pretty solid. Like you Swedes have that down packed, okay? There, in short, I'm in a band here called Easter Bandit. It's the sausage band, and on one of our anniversaries, we had Easter Band, the actual sausage, and I'm gonna say not my favorite thing. It's a very intense sausage flavor. So like imagine like a normal sausage in the States and then just like make it really strong. That's the best way I can explain it. It's just a really strong sausage. And then I didn't eat this, but I have experienced it. The surströmming smells like death. The only thing I can compare it to is like a really rotten egg. It's a fish put in a can for a really long time until it's like almost completely rotted. And you're supposed to eat that. But apparently it's healthy. But it smells awful. So, what is the cost of living like in Sweden? So I'm saying this as a student and not as someone who is living in Sweden. I think it's very important to note that the cost of food is identical, if not maybe a little cheaper here in Sweden than it is in Arkansas. So, as a student, really that's the main thing you have to pay for, that and public transport, which I'll get into in just a second. So in a normal week, I spend roughly 300 to 400 crowns on food. Cost of living, it's not so bad. Like, the stipend card that I got has covered pretty much everything, and I still have money on it for the next month and a half or so. This 300 to 400 covers like 21 meals a week. Granted, I am a little thrifty. I go to like the discount grocery stores to make it go further, but in any sense, like, food prices are comparable to the States. So before I came to Sweden, everyone was like, it's so expensive. But I say from personal experience that it's very manageable to survive here on a budget. Public transport, it's kind of cheap. Where I'm from, we don't have public transport. So it's really nice to get to experience what that's like. And you can walk almost anywhere, at least in my town. So for public transport, if you have a public transport card, it's like 21 crowns, I want to say, per 75 minutes of public transport. So if you get on the bus and you're on the bus for 20 minutes, you get off and you're at this place for half an hour, and then you catch the bus, you don't have to pay for it the second time because it's still within the 75-minute time frame, and they'll give you a ticket that you can use to be like, hey, I was just on the bus, and then they let you on for free. So yeah, it's pretty neat. Trains can get kind of expensive, but trains, there's a bunch of ways to save money on a train. So very last minute ticket, like you show up to the train station, you're like, hey, I need a train right now. Those will be really cheap, and booking them weeks or months in advance will be really cheap. Booking them in like the week of will be when they're the most expensive. Waiting last minute it's risky because they may not have a train ticket. I recently went up to Stockholm, and it was a really busy weekend, and it was a birthday trip I wanted to do. So I just paid for the train ticket up there, which was on the expensive side, but it was just something that I wanted to do. I wanted to get to experience what Stockholm was like. So I went up, and since I saw how expensive it was for my first train ticket, I was like, well, I'll just wait for the last minute. Well, when I was going to leave Stockholm, they did not have a single train for 3 days. So I thought I was going to end up missing classes and put me in a pickle, to say the least. But we lucked out, and they found one overnight train that had like 2 seats left on it to where I needed to go. And it was really expensive. And mainly because it's an overnight train, which overnight trains are an experience, right? So it's a train full of beds, and they're like these little cabins that have 3 bunk beds. So it's, 2 bunk beds, but 3 levels high in each little room. And there's a whole bunch of random people in there. So it's an experience, and it's expensive, but I was able to get home when I needed to. So that's public transport. When you get to Sweden, it can be difficult to make friends. This is because if you've ever looked into what the social life is like here in Sweden or in Norway or in any of the Scandinavian countries, there's a big stereotype almost that they're very reserved people. And I would say that to a degree, this is true. It's very uncommon to be able to walk up to someone and just be like, hey, and then have a friend by doing that. So the best way to make friends, I would say, is to join organizations or clubs. For me, I joined the band here, and that helped me a lot. I made some of my best friends I have here in Sweden through that. And then also, you'll make friends with your classmates, but at the university I'm at, the only people who are in my classes are people who aren't from Sweden. So my university, it's Linnaeus University. They have 2 kinds of courses, English courses and Swedish. So native Swedes take the Swedish courses, and then everyone else takes the English courses. Sometimes there's crossover, but very little, unless it's for something like computer science or something. That's how you can make friends who are in the same boat as you, but also just branching out and joining organizations can help a lot with making friends. So I would say that is something that you should definitely do if you're struggling to make friends, or you just want more friends, because who doesn't want more friends? Now, one that a lot of people will experience is homesickness. So for me, just for some context, I do not have the best relationship with my family. I've been living on my own pretty much for the past 2 years, and even with all of this considered, I still found myself getting really homesick. This was for a whole bunch of reasons. I really didn't like the first class I was in. The first class I was in was basic Swedish, so learning the Swedish language. And just the way the course was conducted, it was really, really hard to make progress in it. So I was struggling a lot with that, and it made the experience not super fun. I was struggling to make friends here. So back in the States, I've never struggled to make friends. Like, I've always been sort of the social butterfly. But here it was really hard to make friends my first few weeks. So it was just sort of the cycle of going to a class I don't like, going to my room, going to sleep. Going to a class I don't like, going to my room, going to sleep. So after a while, it made me a little homesick. And I started to miss my friends back home quite a bit. But then I started to make some friends here, and that just made the experience significantly better. It's hard to study abroad alone. I'm the only person from my university studying abroad in Sweden. Not even just at my university, like in the entire country, I'm the only one from my university in this country. So yeah, it just makes it hard. So the way I would deal with this is either be a better social butterfly than myself, or study abroad with a friend, if possible. I know that can be hard, but those things would make it easier. Or if you have a host family. A host family would probably make your life a lot easier because you go home and see people every day. In Sweden, something that is very different than the States is everyone, when you are in student housing, you get a room to yourself. So in the States, it's not that way. You will almost always have a roommate, unless you're something like an RA or you pay for a room on your own. Yeah, if you have a host family, it will just make your life significantly easier than not having one, I guess. Something else that's pretty great about Sweden is it's a really pretty country. A lot of the cities have their own like old towns almost. So like the town that I'm in has this town center that is like the roads are made of cobblestone. Like not like Minecraft cobblestone, but like actual cobblestone. It's such a stupid joke. Anyways, so there's a lot of old parts of cities and there's a lot of newer parts of cities. So it's a nice contrast, especially in places like Stockholm. It's really interesting. They have a lot of nature too. So the nature kind of, from the forest to all the rivers and lakes and all of that. Sweden is a country of 100,000 lakes. So there's so many things that you can go do and see. And that's something that's kind of helped me beat the homesickness too, because it reminds me a lot of Arkansas. Because the only thing Arkansas is going for it is the nature. Yeah. So it's really pretty. You get to walk around. It's one of the only times in my life that I went out with some friends at like 2 a.m. to just walk, and we were able to see like the galaxy above us, which was one of the most surreal experiences. It was kind of faint, but if you sat and looked at it, you could really see it, and it was super cool. So that is something I highly recommend doing if you were studying in Sweden, and I would say that is a big plus on why you should study in Sweden. So what is something I really like about Sweden? So I mentioned this already, but public transport, it is so good, okay? You are able to get anywhere in the city for like $2 US. That is so cheap. Like even to put gas in my car back home would cost more than you pay for public transport here. And the buses have free Wi-Fi. So for me, I don't have an international plan on my phone, so I live and die on Wi-Fi. So it makes life significantly easier to be able to ride the bus. Also, if I need Wi-Fi to send a text message, I can just wait by a bus stop, wait for a bus to pull up, and then I have Wi-Fi for a minute or two. So public transport, super great, highly recommend. this is kind of a controversial opinion, but I really like the weather here. So currently the sun is setting at like 3:30 in the afternoon. So yeah, right now it's only 6 o'clock and it looks like 4 in the morning. So the weather is nice. It can get cold, but I mean, right now it is warmer here than it is in Arkansas, which is a weird thing to say because Sweden is so far north. But in the town that I'm in, it rains a lot, but it's very light rain, like it's misty or sprinkling, so it's very light. And I like the constant overcast. It's just something that, I don't know, I walk outside and it's pretty cool. I don't have the sun staring me in the eyes, but it's still like really bright and pretty outside. So I really like the weather. And yeah, for the most part, that's some of my experiences here in Sweden. If you have any questions or anything, you can always drop them down below. And I'm A-okay with making a follow-up. Plus, I'm here in Sweden, so I can get native Swedes to come on if you guys really wanted. But that would have to be soon because I leave in less than 2 months. So, all right, I'll see you later.